This is Curious Minnesota, a Star Tribune project that sends staff from the state's largest newsroom hunting for the answers to great questions we receive from you. We're here to answer everything you want to know about the state's people, places, and culture. I'm your host, Erica Pearson. This episode of Curious Minnesota is sponsored by Primrose Schools. The gales of November are here, and that's got many of us thinking about shipwrecks. This month marks 50 years since Lake Superior's most famous shipwreck, the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. And that leads us to two questions from our listeners. The first one is from Michelle Tanner in Minnetonka.
This call is now being recorded.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much for calling.
Yeah, no problem.
The first thing I'd love for you to do is just tell us your question. What did you ask?
Yeah, so we were taking a trip up to Bayfield, Wisconsin, and we did a tour of the Apostle Islands. And I think, being on a ship and just bouncing around the different islands and getting a full grasp of how big Lake Superior really is kind of unearthed a point of curiosity of wanting to learn more about the Edmund Fitzgerald specifically and what else is out there that I might not know about.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And it seems like shipwrecks are a popular topic for our listeners because we also got a question from Jody Swenson in Albert Lee, and she was wondering about how many of the lake's shipwrecks can be tied to the weather. Every time that the anniversary of the Edmund Fitzgerald comes around, I immediately start thinking about that famous song by Gordon Lightfoot, All About What Happened, and it is catchy, it gets stuck in your head, and it's not even my favorite song about shipwrecks. There are so many great ones. I love the Mary Ellen Carter by Stan Rogers, since it has sort of a happy ending as far as shipwrecks go. But anyway, back to our questions. I asked Christa Lawler, one of our fabulous Duluth reporters, to look into our Lake Superior shipwreck questions, since she is lucky enough to have the big lake right nearby. Thanks so much for tackling these questions, Christa.
It is truly my pleasure. This is one of my favorite topics in the entire universe. I love shipwrecks, so I am ready and raring to go.
I love it. Okay, so many of us feel like we sort of know the story of the Edmund Fitzgerald from the song, but the details get a little hazy. What did happen to that famous ship 50 years ago?
I'm glad you asked. So 50 years ago, the Edmund Fitzgerald loaded up with 26,000 tons of taconite pellets on its way to Zug Island, which is in Detroit. That wasn't the typical route that the Edmund Fitz took. It would usually go from Silver Bay to Toledo, Ohio.
Oh.
So it takes off, and the gales of November are a real thing. They can bring in huge crashing waves to Lake Superior, and on this trip, they were 12 to 16 feet, then they were 18 to 25 feet high. And Captain McSorley, who was in charge of the Fitzgerald, was kind of a pro at this. He was going to be retiring soon, and he thought he could just forge ahead and everything would be fine.
Huh.
So trailing behind the Fitzgerald is the Arthur M. Anderson, which had left two harbors right after the Fitzgerald passed. So they were in contact with each other the whole way as the storm was brewing. So at one point, the captain of the Fitzgerald tells the captain of the Arthur M. Anderson that he's taking on water, he's listing, which means the ship is kind of leaning, but he said, we're holding our own. That is the last words anyone ever heard from Captain McSorley.
Wow.
The ship disappeared from radar. It was just gone below the surface, leaving a million mysteries. How did it sink? Did the men know it was sinking? Did it hit something? Becoming one of the greatest mysteries of Lake Superior.
Yeah. And so there were no survivors.
No survivors. There were 29 men on board, about 9 from Minnesota. The Edmund Fitzgerald was this incredible ship that was kind of a high point in someone's career. So to be on board was kind of a cool career move for people. So yeah, no sign of the 29 men.
Where is the shipwreck now?
It's actually in Canadian water.
Oh, in
it's
Canadian waters.
It's right near the international border. So it's in Canadian waters. So they're kind of in charge of making sure that people don't go down there and, steal the plates and bowls and silverware from it. Of course, in the decades after it went down, people have done dives in submarines, and they have seen it at the bottom of Lake Superior. It's broken in two. Half of it is upside down. There's taconite pellets everywhere. I talked to a man who said that he was in a submarine and he came up toward it, and then the words, the Edmund Fitzgerald, just loomed out of the dark.
Oh,
So, yeah.
yeah. How do they declare these as shipwrecks where people died? Is it like a grave site that people can't access?
Right. So the surviving family members of the men who went down on the ship mostly wanted to maintain it as a gravesite and make sure that people weren't diving down there. There have been several expeditions down there. There's been feuds over whether the people's intentions were good or not. In 1995, I believe, uh, expedition brought up the bell from the Edmund Fitzgerald as kind of a marker for families who wanted to, have a place where they could, pay tribute to their missing relatives. But I was told that when it came up out of the water, it made the sound of a clang, and the bell is supposed to be known as the voice of the ship. So it was like this very moving moment. There were a lot of family members around, a lot of different boats. There was media. Came out of the water, made this clang, and now every year they, of course, host families and ring it in honor of the men.
Wow, that is so moving. And the whole story of like the boat disappearing, and you can imagine being the other ship captain wondering what is going on, not being able to do anything is so dramatic.
For sure.
And as we heard, Michelle is wanting to know about other shipwrecks. I know there's so many. So how did you start figuring out which ones we should know about today?
Okay, so this is a topic I love so much. And ever since I've started at the Star Tribune, I've been writing a lot about shipwrecks. And I've kind of developed a friendship with the communications person at the Great Lakes Shipwreck Historical Society,
Uh-huh.
who is always like, we've got one coming for you. So I'll always know there's one on the horizon.
Uh-huh.
And I think in this case, what I did is, every shipwreck is interesting, right? And I think this one required just kind of digging into newspapers.com
Mm-hmm.
and just reading about shipwrecks.
Yes, I love newspapers.com.
So I just went through those and started reading the stories behind them. But every shipwreck has like a really cool story behind it. There's either a character who was on board, or finding it was completed in a unique way, or it went down and something interesting happened. There's not a boring shipwreck story.
Let's hear about a few.
Okay, so my favorite is the Mataafa. So in 1905, there was a huge storm in this part of the lake, and the Mataafa had left Duluth and it was towing a barge. It got a little bit out and it realized it could not handle the waves. So it cut the barge loose, it turned around and came back to Duluth. It got about 200 feet from the shore and it hit bottom.
Wow.
The ship ended up breaking in half. Half of the crew was on one side of it and half of the crew was on the other. And it couldn't get any closer to the shore. And it was a cold night. It was snowing. It was raining. It was terrible. People from Duluth literally lined up on the shoreline and watched half of the men freeze to death or drown while the other half were rescued.
Oh, my God.
So just a completely tragic night, 1905. The storm ended up being named for the Mataafa. And that night, 29 ships on Lake Superior were damaged or destroyed, and 36 men died that night in the fall in 1905.
Wow. So it was another Gales of November that was really
Exactly.
tragic. Tell me about another ship that went down that night.
Right. So another ship that went down was the Madeira, which was in two harbors. It was being towed by the William Edinburgh, and the captain cut the line, and the smaller barge ended up at the rocky ledge, kind of near two harbors, where Fred Benson, one of the crew members, found his way scrambling up the rocky ledge. He threw down a line to his buddies, and all but one person was able to climb to safety on this cold night where waves are hitting so hard. After this storm, that's when Split Rock Lighthouse was built. So from this storm rose a great beacon. Of course, they don't use it anymore as a lighthouse. It's not a working lighthouse, but it is a great place to go over MEA weekend.
Yeah, for sure. And it must have saved countless lives having that there.
For sure.
I'm curious about any other Lake Superior shipwreck stories, maybe a little more recent.
Well, I mean, the Fitzgerald's the recent one. We haven't had shipwrecks like that since. Technology has gotten better, ships are better, navigation is better, communication is better. It's easier to predict what the weather is going to be doing. So it's really the Fitzgerald that kind of is the end of the line of great shipwrecks on Lake Superior, though there have been, 550 in the time leading up to that. So
Mm-hmm.
some of them still not found.
Wow. Wow. That is wild.
I have a local, like a very hyper local favorite. There is a trail in West Duluth called the Wabiz Heshikana.
Mm-hmm.
And as you're walking on that, you can see the remains of a barge or a dredging boat called the Alice Vivian that was parked at Connie's Landing in the 1950s. In 1970s, vandals lit it on fire. So now you can just see like beams from it poking off of someone's private dock.
So it comes out of the surface?
For sure. Yep.
Wow.
So I see it 5 times a week.
Wow. I feel like shipwrecks, the few times that I've either snorkeled over them or kayaked over them, there's this feeling that you get. It's almost like vertigo or I don't know. I can't even explain it. It's like a eerie
Wait,
feeling.
you've gone over shipwrecks?
Yeah, like not any big ones, but I feel like in Florida, just snorkeling, what they'll do is they'll find places where small wrecks are on the bottom, and that's where the coral grows. So anyway.
Wow, very cool. The Madeira is one that you can see from the surface of the water, and I've never tried it. I've always thought I would take my paddleboard over it, but I was recently told that that would be a terrible idea because of the water at that point is maybe a little too dangerous, and I should maybe get a kayak for that kind of tour. But up near Taconite Harbor, which is further up the North Shore, there's remains of a shipwreck along the beach.
Wow.
I've never seen it, but I have read that.
That is wild. Okay, so this is fascinating, and we haven't even gotten into Jody's question very much. She wanted to know if the weather is usually to blame, so let's find out after the break.
At Primrose, our balanced learning approach means exploring academic skills and life skills, combining purposeful play with nurturing guidance from teachers, and setting children up for success in future classrooms. Learn more at primroseschools.com/Twin Cities.
So there have been so many shipwrecks on the Big Lake. What is behind all of these wrecks?
I will say that most shipwrecks are because of the weather. In the case of the Edmund Fitzgerald, they don't know how it went down. But one of the theories is that it was struck by the Three Sisters, which is a series of 3 consecutive waves. These ships are kind of not as strong in the middle, so there's more of a tendency for them to not be supported at that point. But there are also shoals, and that's another idea that people have had is that maybe the Fitzgerald hit a shoal. So that wouldn't be necessarily weather related unless it hit the shoal because of bad visual conditions or something like that. But most shipwrecks do come from a weather situation, and they're either in the spring or in the fall.
I have to admit, even though I'm a fan of shipwreck songs, I do not know exactly what a shoal is. I'm wondering if you can explain it.
Well, I was hoping you would know. What is a shoal? I'm looking it up.
Yes, look it up for us.
It's a shallow area in a body of water, such as a sandbar.
Got it. So if it's a rocky shoal, you could founder.
Yeah, you could.
All of these shipwreck terms. It's like so fun. It's so fun. I feel like shipwrecks
For sure.
have poetic language.
They do.
Okay, so is there anything about Lake Superior itself that makes the Big Lake prone to shipwrecks?
Okay, well, Lake Superior is huge. It is the largest of the Great Lakes. So that's just by default. It's going to have a ton of shipwrecks.
Yeah.
One thing that I think is interesting is that because it is so cold, a lot of times the people who die in a shipwreck are preserved a little more than they would be if they were in warmer water.
Oh, I did not know that. As you're talking, I'm thinking that a lot of these happened a long time ago. So how common are shipwrecks today?
They just don't happen.
Wow, not at all.
Not on Lake Superior. There has not been a significant one since the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
You talked about the bell from the Edmund Fitzgerald. Where is that now?
So after they pulled the bell out of the water, they replaced it with kind of a token bell that had the names of the men who all died in the wreck.
Mm-hmm.
And they took the bell to the Historical Society in Whitefish Point so that anyone can see it anytime they visit.
Have you been there? Are there other things to see?
I have not been there. I do know that that is their most famous display, is their Edmund Fitzgerald stuff. And I haven't been there, but it is like definitely on my to-do list. I have a big circle tour planned at some point in my near future of Lake Superior.
Yes, a circle tour is on my list as well. There's another shipwreck museum closer.
We have one in Duluth that is the Lake Superior Maritime Museum, and that does have an Edmund Fitzgerald display there. There are a lot of people in this area who worked on the Edmund Fitzgerald before it went down, who kind of knew the men and had a lot of familiarity with the boat. So this area does have a bit of a connection to the ship, at least.
Yeah, for sure. Well, before we go, I'm also wondering about how this big anniversary of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald is being commemorated this month. Is there something happening in Duluth and other places in the state that we should know about?
Split Rock Lighthouse and the museum in Whitefish Point, they both always do an event where they ring the bell. At Split Rock, they'll light the beacon, and they do that every single year. And in fact, they did it when Gordon Lightfoot died. They had a special lighting of it. There's also, every year we host here the Gales of November, which is like a kind of a conference for ship nerds. And I think this year is kind of themed around the Edmund Fitzgerald. And of course, there's just the annual listening to the song, which has started playing locally. So kind of like Wham and Last Christmas, we now have the Fitzgerald season with the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald playing in your local breweries and stores.
Okay. So for me, November 10th is my birthday, actually. So it's sort of a sad event to share that date with. But thank you so much, Christa.
Thank you. This is so fun. Ask me anything about shipwrecks. It's my favorite topic.
And thank you so much to Michelle and Jody, who were curious about Lake Superior shipwrecks. You can read all of our Curious Minnesota stories online at startribune.com. And if you have feedback for us or a question that you'd like us to answer, send a note to curious@startribune.com. Thanks for listening to Curious Minnesota. Our show is recorded at the Minnesota Star Tribune studio in beautiful downtown Minneapolis. Melissa Townsend produced this show, and the music is by Matt Gilmer. Until next time, stay curious!